The phone buzzed against the nightstand like an angry wasp, its blue glow cutting through the darkness of our bedroom. 3:17 in the morning. I'd been awake for hours anyway, listening to Iris breathe beside me, her fever finally broken after 3 days in the hospital with what the doctors called a severe infection of unknown origin. I reached for the device, careful not to wake her. The message preview made my stomach clench like a fist around broken glass. Sorry for infecting you. Unknown number. But I knew that phrasing, that particular brand of smug wordplay. My thumb hovered over the screen for a moment before I opened the full message thread. Nothing else. Just those 4 words that managed to say everything and nothing at once. I slipped out of bed, grabbed my robe, and padded downstairs to my workshop in the basement. The familiar smell of sawdust and varnish usually calmed me, but tonight it felt suffocating. I sat at my workbench, surrounded by half-finished restoration projects, and stared at that message until the words burned themselves into my retinas. Iris had been sick for a week before we went to the hospital. Fever, nausea, exhaustion. She'd insisted it was just stress from her photography business. Too many late nights at the studio with her partner Liam, working on some big client project she couldn't talk about. Confidentiality agreements, she'd said. Very hush-hush stuff. I'd believed her, like the fool I apparently was. The phone buzzed again. This time a call from the same number. I answered without thinking. Guess you figured it out, brother. Porter Keller's voice hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. My oldest friend. The guy who'd been best man at our wedding 8 years ago. The one who'd helped me move into this house, who came over every Sunday to watch football and drink my beer. Porter. My voice sounded steady, which surprised me. Inside, everything was collapsing like a house of cards in a hurricane. Look, Holden, I know how this looks. How it looks? I kept my tone conversational, almost friendly. It looks like you've been screwing my wife and she caught something from you. How am I doing so far? Silence on the other end. Then a nervous laugh. Come on, man. You know it's not that simple. Actually, it seems pretty straightforward to me. I picked up a chisel from my workbench, tested its edge against my thumb. Sharp enough to split wood. Sharp enough for a lot of things. How long? Holden. How long, Porter? Another pause. 6 months, maybe 7. 7 months. While I was working 16-hour days to keep my restoration business afloat, taking on every project I could find to pay for Iris's fancy camera equipment and studio rent, she was playing house with my best friend. She wanted to tell you, Porter said, his voice gaining confidence now that the secret was out. But we knew you'd take it badly. Take it badly. I repeated the words slowly, tasting them. You mean I'd be upset that my wife and best friend were lying to my face for 7 months? It just happened, man. These things happen. We didn't plan it. That made me laugh, a sound with no humor in it. Right. Just one of those crazy coincidences, like how she's been working late every Tuesday and Thursday, which just happens to be when you're free from your consulting gigs. How did you... I'm not stupid, Porter. Apparently I'm naive, but not stupid. I set the chisel down carefully, point first into the workbench. So, what now? You two ride off into the sunset while I pick up the pieces? We want to handle this like adults. No drama, no lawyers if we can help it. Iris thinks. The words tasted like poison. What does Iris think? She thinks you deserve better than this conversation over the phone. She wants to talk to you properly when she's feeling better. How considerate of her. I stood up, paced to the small window that looked out onto our backyard. The garden Iris and I had planted together our first spring in the house was overgrown now, choked with weeds. Funny how I hadn't noticed that before. And what do you think, Porter? I think... He took a deep breath. I think you're a good guy, Holden. You deserve someone who appreciates you. Someone who appreciates me. I nodded to my reflection in the dark window. Not someone who lies to me for 7 months while taking money out of our joint account to pay for hotel rooms. We never used your money. Our joint account, Porter. The one she has access to. The one that's been hemorrhaging cash for months while she claimed her business was struggling. I'd been tracking our finances obsessively lately, trying to figure out why we were always broke despite my steady income. Now it made sense. How much? Holden, listen. How much of my money did you spend on motel rooms and fancy dinners? The line went quiet for so long I thought he'd hung up. Then, I'll pay you back. Will you now? I turned away from the window. That's very generous of you, considering you just destroyed my marriage. Your marriage was already over, man. Iris has been unhappy for years. She just didn't know how to tell you. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Years, not months. Years. Well, I said, surprised by how calm I sounded. I guess I should thank you for clearing that up for me. Holden, don't do anything stupid, okay? I know you're angry. Angry? I considered that. Was I angry? I felt something, but it was colder than anger, more focused. No, Porter, I'm not angry. I'm grateful. Grateful? You've given me clarity. For the first time in years, I can see everything perfectly. I walked back to my workbench, ran my finger along the grain of a piece of oak I'd been preparing for a client's antique desk. You know what I do for a living, Porter? You restore old furniture. I fix things that are broken. I take something damaged and make it beautiful again. But sometimes, I picked up the chisel again, felt its weight in my hand. Sometimes the damage is too extensive. Sometimes you have to tear something down completely before you can rebuild it. What are you talking about? I'm talking about renovation, Porter. Total renovation, starting from the foundation up. You're scaring me, man. Good. You should be scared. I set the chisel down gently. Because you have no idea what you've started here. Holden. I ended the call and turned off the phone. Then I sat in my workshop until dawn, thinking about foundations and renovations and the best way to tear something down so completely that nothing recognizable remained. Upstairs, Iris slept peacefully, recovering from her infection. She had no idea that her fever was about to be the least of her problems. I made coffee at 6:30, just like every other morning for the past 8 years. Same routine, same mug, same 2 spoonfuls of sugar. The normalcy felt surreal after the night I'd had, but I clung to it. Routine was important now. I couldn't afford to let anything seem different. Iris came downstairs around 9, still pale but moving better than she had in days. She wore the blue silk robe I'd bought her for Christmas, the one that brought out her eyes. Those same eyes that had been looking at Porter with whatever expression she'd never given me. You're up early, she said, pouring herself coffee from the pot I'd left warming. Couldn't sleep. True enough. How are you feeling? Better. Still weak, but the fever's gone. She settled into the chair across from me at our kitchen table, the one by the window where the morning light made her auburn hair shine like copper. Thank you for taking care of me. Of course. I watched her face carefully. That's what husbands do. Something flickered in her expression. Guilt, maybe, or just fatigue. Holden, we need to talk. Do we? I sipped my coffee, kept my voice neutral. About what? She opened her mouth, then closed it, looked down at her hands wrapped around the mug. About us. About things. Things. I nodded thoughtfully. That's pretty vague, Iris. What kind of things? I've been thinking while I was sick. About our marriage. About whether we're both happy. Are you happy? I asked. The question seemed to catch her off guard. She looked up at me, and for a moment I saw something real in her face. Something that might have been regret. I don't know, she said finally. Are you? I thought I was. I finished my coffee and stood up. But I'm starting to realize I might have been wrong about a lot of things. I left her sitting there and went to get dressed for work. In our bedroom, I retrieved her phone from the nightstand where she'd left it charging. She was still downstairs. I could hear her moving around in the kitchen. I had maybe 10 minutes before she came up to shower. Her passcode was easy. Our anniversary. She'd never been creative with security. What I found in her messages made my hands shake. Not just the texts with Porter, though those were bad enough. Months of planning, logistics, lies they'd told me. Hotel receipts forwarded as photos. Pictures I didn't want to see but couldn't stop looking at. But there was more. Much more. A whole folder of screenshots from bank statements. Not ours. Accounts I'd never seen before, with deposits that made my restoration income look like pocket change. Money flowing in from something called the Maritime Arts Foundation, in amounts that didn't make sense for her photography work. I scrolled deeper, taking photos of everything with my own phone, email threads with people I didn't recognize, talking about donations and charitable contributions and tax advantages. Iris's responses were careful, professional, talking about documentation and discretion. A charity scam. My wife wasn't just cheating on me, she was running some kind of elaborate fraud operation. The shower started running upstairs. I quickly forwarded myself the most damaging messages, then deleted the sent items from her phone. Cleared the call log too, removing any trace of Porter's late-night confession. When Iris came down 20 minutes later, dressed for the first time in days, I was reading the newspaper at the kitchen table like nothing had happened. I'm going to the studio for a few hours, she said. Liam's been handling everything, but I need to check on a few projects. Take it easy, I said without looking up. You don't want to relapse. I'll be fine. She kissed the top of my head, a gesture so familiar and meaningless that it made my chest tight. What are your plans today? Mrs. Henderson's dining set, the one with the water damage. I turned a page of the newspaper. Should keep me busy most of the day. Okay, I'll see you tonight. After she left, I called my assistant Mara and told her to cancel my appointments. Mara Sims had been working with me for 3 years, ever since she'd graduated from the local community college with a degree in business management and a mouth that could make a sailor blush. She was sharp, loyal, and had no patience for anyone's nonsense. You sound weird, she said when I explained I needed the day off. Weird how? Like you're planning something stupid. What's going on? I'd been thinking about how much to tell her. Mara had never liked Iris, had always claimed she could smell the fake on her from across the room. Maybe it was time to trust that instinct. Can you meet me at the shop in an hour? I asked. I need help with a project. What kind of project? The kind that requires your particular skill set. Mara had grown up in foster care, bouncing between homes until she aged out of the system at 18. She'd learned early how to read people, how to spot lies, and how to take care of herself when no one else would. Those skills had served her well in our business, especially when dealing with clients who tried to lowball us or pass off reproductions as genuine antiques. This is about Iris, isn't it? She said. How did you... Because you've been walking around like a man with a toothache for months, and now suddenly you sound like you've figured out what's been eating at you. She paused. What did she do? I'll tell you when you get here. An hour later, I was sitting in my workshop showing Mara the screenshots I'd taken from Iris's phone. She studied them with the same focused attention she brought to authentication work, occasionally making small sounds of disgust or surprise. Holy crap, Holden. She looked up from my phone screen. She's been busy. That's one way to put it. The charity thing, that's smart. Set up a fake foundation, get people to donate for tax write-offs, keep most of the money. She scrolled through more messages. But she's got to have someone on the inside, someone who knows how to make the paperwork look legitimate. Porter works in IT consulting. He handles a lot of small business accounts. Porter? Your buddy Porter? Mara's expression darkened. Please tell me he's not just helping with the money laundering. I took the phone back, closed the evidence folder. They've been having an affair for 7 months. Mara stared at me for a long moment. Then she stood up and walked to my tool cabinet, came back with a hammer. What are you doing? I asked. Getting ready to break some kneecaps. She tested the weight of the hammer in her hand. Starting with Porter's. Put that down. Come on, Holden. You can't tell me you haven't thought about it. I had thought about it. All night I'd thought about a lot of things I could do with the tools in my workshop, but that wasn't the kind of renovation I had in mind. Violence is messy, I said, and stupid. It leaves evidence, creates problems, solves nothing. So what's your plan? I'm going to destroy them. I said it calmly, like I was discussing the weather. Completely, professionally, socially, financially. I'm going to take apart their lives piece by piece until there's nothing left but rubble. Mara set down the hammer and grinned. Now you're talking. What do you need me to do? I spent the next 2 hours laying out my plan. It was ambitious, maybe even crazy, but it had the virtue of being completely legal. I wasn't going to break any laws. I was just going to use the truth as a wrecking ball. First, we need more evidence, I explained. Everything on her phone is just the beginning. I need to know how deep this charity scam goes, who else is involved, how much money they've stolen. I can help with that, Mara said. My cousin Danny works in IT security. He owes me a favor. What kind of favor? The kind where I didn't tell his wife about his gambling problem. She shrugged. Family is complicated. Can he trace financial records? Bank transfers, that kind of thing? If anyone can, it's Danny. What else? I need to know everyone in their social circle. Friends, clients, business contacts, anyone who might be interested to learn what Iris and Porter have been up to. You want to destroy their reputations. I want to make sure everyone they know understands exactly who they're dealing with. I pulled up a contact list on my phone, starting with the people who matter most to them professionally. Mara was quiet for a moment, studying my face. You know there's no coming back from this, right? Once you start down this road, your marriage is over no matter what. My marriage was over 7 months ago, I said. I just didn't know it yet. And you're okay with that? I thought about Iris kissing the top of my head that morning, the casual affection of someone going through the motions. I thought about Porter's voice on the phone, calling me brother, while confessing to betraying me. I thought about all the nights I'd worked late to pay for her equipment while she was spending our money on hotel rooms. I'm better than okay with it, I said. I'm looking forward to it. The Maritime Arts Foundation turned out to be a masterpiece of creative fiction. According to the paperwork Mara's cousin Danny had tracked down, it was a non-profit organization dedicated to supporting emerging artists in coastal communities through grants, exhibitions, and educational programs. The website looked professional, complete with stock photos of smiling artists and testimonials from grateful recipients. None of it was real. The grants didn't exist. The exhibitions were fabricated. The testimonials were from people who'd never heard of the foundation. But the donations were very real, and they were substantial. Over the past 18 months, the Maritime Arts Foundation had collected nearly $200,000 from well-meaning contributors who thought they were supporting struggling artists. Most of that money had disappeared into accounts controlled by Iris and Porter. This is beautiful work, Danny had said when he walked me through the financial trail. Whoever set this up knows what they're doing. They've got shell companies, offshore accounts, the whole 9 yards. Can you trace where the money went? Some of it. About $60,000 went to a property management company in Portland. Another $40,000 to various travel and entertainment expenses. The rest, he shrugged. They were smart about it. Lots of cash withdrawals, prepaid cards, cryptocurrency conversions. Hard to track. What about the donors? Do you have a list? I do. And you're going to love this. Danny handed me a printout. Look at the names. I scanned the list and felt my jaw drop. Rafe Dunlop, the city's most prominent real estate developer. Catherine Mills, who owned half the galleries downtown. James Morrison, whose family foundation supported most of the arts programs in the area. These aren't random donors, I said. Nope. These are people with serious money and serious connections. People who really care about supporting the arts. Danny grinned. People who are going to be really upset when they find out they've been scammed. How upset? The kind of upset that involves lawyers and newspaper headlines and very public investigations. Perfect. I spent the next week preparing my attack on multiple fronts. First, I needed to document everything without alerting Iris or Porter that I was onto them. That meant being the perfect husband, showing no signs that anything had changed. It was harder than I'd expected. Every morning, I made coffee and asked about her day. Every evening, I listened to her talk about her photography projects, knowing that half of what she said was lies. When Porter called to invite me to watch the game on Sunday, I accepted like nothing had happened. You're getting scary good at this, Mara observed on Friday afternoon. We were in my workshop, going through the evidence we'd collected. The whole innocent husband act. It's not an act, I said. I am innocent. I'm also not stupid. What's the difference? Innocent means I trusted people I shouldn't have. Stupid would be letting them get away with it. That evening, Iris announced she was going out with her friend Sloane Fisher. Sloane ran an event planning business and knew everyone worth knowing in the local arts scene. She was also the biggest gossip in the city, which made her perfect for what I had in mind. Girls' night, Iris explained, applying lipstick in our bedroom mirror. Sloane's been wanting to catch up, and I've been so busy with work. Have fun, I said. You deserve a night out. After she left, I drove to the Harbor Bar, a local institution where the arts crowd gathered to drink overpriced wine and discuss their projects. Sure enough, I found Sloane holding court at a corner table, surrounded by her usual circle of admirers. Sloane Fisher was in her early 40s, blonde, and blessed with the kind of aggressive charm that made her excellent at her job. She also had a weakness for good-looking men and expensive cocktails, which I was counting on. Holden! She waved me over when she spotted me. What are you doing here? Isn't this girls' night? Iris is running late, I lied smoothly. She asked me to let you know she'll be here in an hour or so. Oh, good. I was starting to worry. Sloane gestured to an empty chair. Sit with us while you wait. You know everyone, right? I did know most of them, at least by reputation. Local artists, gallery owners, a few wealthy collectors. Exactly the crowd I needed to reach. Actually, I said, settling into the chair next to Sloane, I was hoping to talk to you about something. A business opportunity. Oh? Sloane's eyes lit up. She was always looking for new ways to expand her client base. I've been thinking about organizing a charity auction. Some of my restoration clients have pieces they'd be willing to donate, and I know Iris has been involved with that Maritime Foundation thing. The Maritime Arts Foundation? Sloane nodded enthusiastically. Yes, Iris has mentioned that. Wonderful organization, very exclusive. That's what I've heard. I was thinking about making a donation myself, but I wanted to learn more about their work first. Do you know much about their programs? Well, Sloane leaned closer, lowering her voice conspiratorially. I probably shouldn't say this, but I've been trying to get them to hire me for their events. The problem is, they seem to do everything very quietly. Very private. Private how? I've never actually seen any of their exhibitions or grant ceremonies, and trust me, I know about every arts event in this city. She took a sip of her martini. When I asked Iris about it, she said they prefer to keep a low profile. Don't want to embarrass the artists they're helping, you know? That's thoughtful of them. It is. Although, Sloane glanced around the table, making sure the others were engaged in their own conversations. Between you and me, I'm starting to wonder if they actually exist. My pulse quickened, but I kept my expression neutral. What do you mean? I mean, I've been in this business for 15 years. I know every nonprofit, every foundation, every arts organization within 100 miles of here. But I've never met anyone who's actually received a grant from Maritime Arts. Never seen one of their exhibitions. Never even met anyone who's attended one of their events. Huh. I frowned, as if this was the first time the thought had occurred to me. That is strange. Right? And when I tried to look them up online, their website is pretty generic. Stock photos, vague mission statements, no real details about specific programs or recipients. Maybe they're just starting out? Maybe, or maybe... Sloane paused, then shook her head. Never mind. I'm probably being paranoid. No. What were you going to say? It's just that I've seen this before. Fake charities, I mean. Usually it's people trying to get tax write-offs for donations that don't actually go anywhere useful. She lowered her voice even further. There was a scandal a few years ago with a veterans charity that turned out to be completely fabricated. The organizers kept 90% of the donations for themselves. That's terrible. It is, and the worst part is, it makes people suspicious of legitimate charities too. She finished her martini and signaled the bartender for another. But I'm sure Maritime Arts is fine. Iris wouldn't be involved with anything questionable. Of course not, I agreed. Iris has excellent judgment. We chatted for a few more minutes before I excused myself, claiming that Iris had texted to say she was running even later. As I left the bar, I felt satisfied with the evening's work. I'd planted seeds of doubt about the Maritime Arts Foundation in the mind of the city's most effective gossip, and I'd done it in a way that seemed completely innocent. By tomorrow, half the arts community would be wondering about the mysterious charity that nobody had ever actually encountered. The next phase of my plan was more direct. I'd identified 3 of the foundation's biggest donors from Danny's financial records: Rafe Dunlop, Catherine Mills, and James Morrison. All 3 were prominent figures in the local arts scene. All 3 had given substantial amounts, and all 3 would be devastated to learn they'd been scammed. I started with Rafe Dunlop, partly because he was the biggest donor, and partly because I knew exactly how to reach him. Rafe owned most of the commercial real estate in the historic district, including the building where Iris had her photography studio. He was proud of his support for local artists and frequently mentioned his charitable giving in interviews with the local newspaper. On Monday morning, I called his office and asked to schedule a meeting about a potential restoration project. Rafe collected antique furniture as a hobby and had used my services several times in the past. His assistant scheduled me for Thursday afternoon. "Holden!" Rafe stood up from behind his massive oak desk when I was shown into his office. "Good to see you. What have you got for me this time?" "Actually, I wanted to talk to you about something else first." I settled into one of the leather chairs across from his desk. "I've been thinking about expanding my charitable giving, and I heard you've been supporting the Maritime Arts Foundation." Rafe's face lit up. "Wonderful organization. Really making a difference for emerging artists." "That's what I've heard. Can you tell me more about their work? I'd love to see some examples of the artists they've helped." "Well..." Rafe's enthusiasm dimmed slightly. "I have to admit, I haven't had much direct contact with the recipients. The foundation is very discreet about protecting their privacy." "Of course, but surely they've sent you reports? Photos from exhibitions, success stories, that kind of thing?" "They send quarterly updates," Rafe said, but he sounded less certain now. "Very professional communications. I'd love to see one, if you don't mind, just to get a sense of their approach." Rafe opened his desk drawer and pulled out a folder. "Here's their most recent report." I studied the document he handed me. It was well designed, with professional layout and typography, but the content was almost entirely generic. Vague statistics about artists served and community impact, without any specific names or details. The photos were clearly stock images. "This is very impressive," I said, handing it back. Have you ever attended one of their events? Not yet. They tend to keep their exhibitions small and intimate, by invitation only. And you haven't been invited? Rafe's smile became strained. I'm sure I will be, eventually. They're probably just getting established. How long have you been supporting them? About 1.5 years now. 1.5 years, and their biggest donor had never been invited to a single event. I could see the doubt creeping into Rafe's expression as he realized how that sounded. You know, I said carefully, I was talking to Sloane Fisher the other night, and she mentioned that she's never actually met any of the artists they've helped. Have you? No, but... Rafe stopped mid-sentence, his face darkening. What are you suggesting, Holden? I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just trying to do my due diligence before I make a donation. I leaned forward slightly. But if I were you, I might want to ask for more detailed documentation of how my money was being used. Rafe stared at the quarterly report in his hands for a long moment. Then he looked up at me with an expression I'd never seen from him before. Cold, calculating, dangerous. If I find out someone has been taking advantage of my generosity, he said quietly, there will be consequences. I'm sure it's nothing, I said, standing up. Probably just a very private organization. But as I left his office, I knew I'd accomplished exactly what I'd intended. Rafe Dunlop was now suspicious of the Maritime Arts Foundation, and he had the resources and connections to investigate them thoroughly. Within hours, that investigation would lead him straight to Iris and Porter. The call came at 2:15 on Friday afternoon. I was in my workshop, putting the finishing touches on Mrs. Henderson's dining set, when my phone buzzed with Iris's ringtone. Holden, we need to talk. Her voice was tight, strained. Can you come home? I'm in the middle of... Now, Holden, please. Something in her tone made me set down my sandpaper. What's wrong? Just come home. I found her in our living room, pacing back and forth in front of the windows like a caged animal. Her face was pale, her hands shaking slightly. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. What's going on? I asked, settling into my usual chair. Someone's been asking questions about the Maritime Arts Foundation. She stopped pacing and turned to face me. Rafe Dunlop called the studio this morning. He wanted to meet with me and Liam to discuss the foundation's work. That sounds positive. He's a big supporter of the arts. He wasn't calling as a supporter, Holden. He was calling as someone who thinks he's been lied to. Iris resumed her pacing. He's been making calls, talking to other donors, asking for documentation that we don't have. What kind of documentation? Proof that the foundation actually exists. Names of grant recipients, photos from exhibitions, evidence that any of the money donated has actually gone to help artists. I kept my expression carefully neutral. And you don't have that? Iris stopped pacing again and stared at me. You know we don't. The admission hung in the air between us like a confession. I let the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable. I know you don't what, Iris? Don't play games with me. Her voice was sharper now, edged with desperation. You know about the foundation. You know it's not entirely legitimate. I know you've been telling people you work with a charity called the Maritime Arts Foundation, I said carefully. Are you saying that's not true? It's complicated. Complicated how? Iris sank onto the couch across from me, her head in her hands. The foundation exists on paper. We have all the proper documentation, tax-exempt status, everything. But the programs, the grants and exhibitions, those are more theoretical. Theoretical. We were going to implement them eventually, once we had enough funding to make a real impact. She looked up at me with pleading eyes. It's not fraud, Holden. It's just delayed implementation. Delayed implementation. I repeated the phrase slowly. Is that what you call it when you take people's money and spend it on hotel rooms? The color drained from her face. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the $60,000 that went to Portland Property Management. I'm talking about the $40,000 in travel and entertainment expenses. I'm talking about the cash withdrawals and prepaid cards and cryptocurrency conversions. Iris stared at me in shock. How do you know about that? The same way Rafe Dunlop is going to know about it when his investigation gets that far. I leaned forward in my chair. Did you really think you could steal $200,000 from people and nobody would ever ask questions? We didn't steal anything. The words came out as a shout. Then she lowered her voice, glancing toward the windows as if afraid the neighbors might hear. We borrowed it. We were going to pay it back. With what money? With future donations. And Porter has some investments that are about to pay off. Porter. I said his name like it tasted bad. How long has he been helping you with this? Iris's face went through several expressions in quick succession. Surprise, fear, calculation, resignation. You know about Porter. I know about a lot of things, Iris. The question is whether you're going to tell me the truth or keep lying until the whole thing collapses around you. She was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. It started as a legitimate business idea. Porter knows about nonprofit law, and I have connections in the arts community. We thought we could create something real, something that would actually help people. But you decided to help yourselves first. We needed seed money to get started. The donations were supposed to cover initial expenses while we built the infrastructure for the real programs. Seed money. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at our overgrown garden. Is that what you call the affair, too? Initial expenses? When I turned back around, Iris was crying. Not the pretty, delicate tears she used when she wanted sympathy, but ugly, desperate sobs that shook her whole body. I'm sorry, she gasped between sobs. I'm so sorry, Holden. I never meant for any of this to happen. Which part? The fraud or the adultery? Both. Neither. I don't know. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, smearing her makeup. I was unhappy, and Porter was there, and one thing led to another. One thing led to another. I walked back to my chair but didn't sit down. For 7 months. How long have you known? Long enough. I studied her face, looking for any trace of the woman I'd married 8 years ago. The question is, what are we going to do about it? We? Hope flickered in her eyes. You and Porter, what are you going to do when Rafe Dunlop's investigation leads him to bank records and financial documents and evidence of where his money really went? The hope died. I don't know. You don't know. I nodded. Well, let me tell you what's going to happen. Rafe is going to share his findings with the other donors. Catherine Mills, James Morrison, all the rest of them. They're going to contact the authorities. There's going to be an investigation, probably a grand jury, definitely criminal charges. Holden, please. And when that happens, when your face is on the front page of the newspaper and your name is on the court documents, what do you think is going to happen to your photography business? Iris flinched as if I'd slapped her. Your clients are going to run for the hills, I continued. Your reputation is going to be destroyed. Your studio lease is going to be terminated. Everything you've worked for is going to disappear. Stop. And Porter? His IT consulting business is finished. Who's going to hire someone who's been convicted of charity fraud? His clients are going to drop him. His professional licenses are going to be revoked. His future is going to be ruined. Stop it. And then there's the civil lawsuits. Rafe and Catherine and James are going to want their money back, with interest, plus punitive damages. You're going to lose this house, your equipment, your savings, everything. Iris was sobbing again, her face in her hands. What do you want from me? I want you to understand what you've done. I sat down across from her, my voice calm and steady. I want you to understand that your choices have consequences, not just for you, but for everyone around you. I know that. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, It looks like you thought you could lie and cheat and steal, and somehow it would all work out fine. She looked up at me through her tears. What can I do? How can I fix this? You can't fix it, Iris. It's too late for that. I leaned back in my chair. But you can choose how you want to handle what comes next. What do you mean? I mean you can either face this with whatever dignity you have left, or you can keep lying and make everything worse for yourself. And what about us? What about our marriage? I looked at her for a long moment. This woman who had shared my bed for 8 years, who had promised to love and honor me, who had been planning to frame me for her crimes. Our marriage ended 7 months ago, I said. You just forgot to tell me. That evening, after Iris had retreated to our bedroom to think about everything, I called Mara. How did it go? She asked. Better than expected. She admitted to the fraud, admitted to the affair, and basically confirmed everything we suspected. Did she say anything about trying to pin it on you? That was the detail I hadn't mentioned to Iris, the one piece of evidence that had made this personal in a way that mere adultery never could. Hidden in her phone messages was a conversation with Porter about creating documentation that would make it look like I was the one who had set up the fake charity, using my business connections to solicit donations. They had been planning to destroy my reputation to save their own. She didn't bring it up, I said, but I don't think she's given up on that idea yet. So, what's next? Next, we make sure she doesn't get the chance to use it. The Harbor Bar was packed on Saturday night, buzzing with the kind of energy that only comes when a community has fresh scandal to dissect. I arrived at 8:30 and found exactly what I'd expected. Sloane Fisher holding court at her usual table, surrounded by an audience hanging on her every word. Holden! She waved me over with the enthusiasm of someone who'd already had several drinks. Perfect timing. We were just talking about your wife. I made my way through the crowd, noting the faces around Sloane's table. Catherine Mills was there, along with several gallery owners and a few artists I recognized. All of them looked up at me with expressions ranging from curiosity to pity. What about Iris? I asked, sliding into an empty chair. About this Maritime Arts Foundation business. Sloane leaned forward conspiratorially. It turns out you were right to be suspicious. Was I? Catherine here has been doing some digging. Sloane gestured to the elegant woman sitting across from her. Catherine Mills owned 3 galleries downtown and was known for her sharp business sense. Tell him what you found. Catherine studied me for a moment before speaking. I called the State Attorney General's office yesterday. They have no record of the Maritime Arts Foundation ever filing the required annual reports for a tax-exempt organization. What does that mean? I asked. It means either they're not actually a legitimate nonprofit or they're operating illegally. Catherine's voice was crisp, professional. Either way, it's a problem. I also tried to contact some of the artists mentioned on their website, added Tom Chen, a sculptor whose work was displayed in several local galleries. The ones who supposedly received grants, none of them exist. None of them? The names are made up. I checked with the art schools they supposedly attended, looked for their work online, asked around the community. Nothing. Tom shook his head in disgust. It's all fabricated. I let my expression show appropriate shock and concern. That can't be right. Iris has been working with them for over a year. Has she? Sloane's eyes glittered with malicious curiosity. Or has she been telling you she's working with them? The implication hung in the air like smoke. Around the table, I could see people processing the suggestion, weighing it against what they knew about Iris. I don't understand what you're suggesting, I said carefully. We're not suggesting anything, Catherine said. We're just sharing what we've learned. But Holden, you should know that Rafe Dunlop has contacted the FBI. The FBI? Charity fraud is a federal crime. When it involves this much money, crossing state lines, it becomes a matter for federal investigation. Catherine's voice was gentle but firm. If Iris is involved with this organization, she needs to get a lawyer. If she's involved, I looked around the table. What do you mean, if? Sloane and Catherine exchanged a glance. It was Catherine who answered. Holden, we've been asking around about the Maritime Arts Foundation for the past few days. Your wife's name keeps coming up as one of their primary representatives. According to several donors, she's the one who solicited their contributions. That's impossible. Is it? Sloane leaned closer. Think about it, Holden. Iris has been working late constantly, traveling frequently, always talking about this mysterious foundation that nobody has ever actually encountered. What if she hasn't been working with them? What if she is them? I let the silence stretch, allowing the weight of their words to settle. Around the table I could see people watching my reaction, waiting to see how I would handle this revelation about my wife. I need another drink, I said finally, standing up from the table. At the bar, I ordered a whiskey and tried to look like a man whose world was crumbling. It wasn't difficult. The only acting required was pretending I was surprised. Rough night? The bartender, a guy named Mike who'd been working at the harbor for 15 years, slid my drink across the bar. Getting rougher by the minute. I heard some of what they were saying over there. Mike glanced toward Sloane's table. About your wife and that charity thing. What are people saying? Mike shrugged. That she's been scamming donors. That the whole foundation is fake. He paused. That you probably didn't know anything about it. Why would people think that? Because you're not the type, Holden. You're straight up honest. Everyone knows that. Mike wiped down the bar with a towel. Besides, if you were involved in something like that, you wouldn't be here asking questions. You'd be halfway to Mexico by now. I almost smiled at that. Thanks, Mike. For what it's worth, I don't think anyone blames you. Most folks figure you're as much a victim as anyone else. That was exactly what I'd been hoping to hear. I finished my drink and returned to Sloane's table, where the conversation had moved on to speculation about what would happen when the FBI investigation began in earnest. They'll freeze all the accounts, Catherine was saying. Standard procedure in fraud cases, and they'll probably search any properties connected to the organization. What about the people who were involved? Asked Tom. What kind of charges are we talking about? Wire fraud, mail fraud, conspiracy, money laundering? Catherine ticked off the charges on her fingers. We're talking about serious federal crimes, multiple felonies. How much prison time? Sloane asked. Depends on the amount of money involved and the defendant's criminal history. But for something this elaborate, with this much money, 10 to 20 years minimum. I felt a cold satisfaction settle in my chest. 10 to 20 years. That seemed about right. What about restitution? I asked. Would the victims get their money back? Catherine's expression darkened. That's the problem with fraud cases. Usually, by the time the perpetrators are caught, the money is long gone. Victims are lucky to recover 10 cents on the dollar. Around the table, faces grew grim as people contemplated the implications. These were Iris's peers, her professional community, and they were already writing her off as a criminal. I should go, I said, standing up again. I need to talk to Iris about all this. Holden, Sloane caught my arm as I turned to leave. Whatever happens, you know you have friends here, right? People who care about you. I appreciate that. And if you need anything, a place to stay, help with legal fees, whatever, just ask. The offers of support continued as I made my way toward the door. By the time I reached the street, I'd been invited to stay with 3 different families and offered loans from 2 more. The community was already rallying around me, the innocent husband betrayed by his criminal wife. It was perfect. At home, I found Iris in the kitchen, staring at her laptop screen with an expression of growing panic. She looked up when I came in, her face pale and drawn. Where have you been? The harbor bar. I hung up my jacket and sat down across from her. Interesting conversation tonight. About what? About the FBI investigation into the Maritime Arts Foundation. Iris's face went white. What FBI investigation? The one that started when Rafe Dunlop contacted federal authorities about charity fraud. I leaned back in my chair. Apparently it's a federal crime to solicit donations for a fake nonprofit. Who knew? It's not fake, Iris said weakly. Really? Because according to Catherine Mills, you never filed the required paperwork with the state. According to Tom Chen, the artists on your website don't exist. According to everyone at the Harbor Bar tonight, you're looking at 10 to 20 years in federal prison. Iris stared at me in horror. 10 to 20 years? Minimum. Wire fraud, mail fraud, conspiracy, money laundering. Apparently, you've been busy. Holden, you have to help me. Help you what? Help me fix this. Help me make it right. She reached across the table and grabbed my hands. We can pay back the money. We can make the foundation legitimate. We? I pulled my hands away. There is no we in this, Iris. This is your mess. But I'm your wife. You're Porter's lover. You made that choice 7 months ago. Iris started crying again, but this time I felt nothing. No sympathy, no regret, no desire to comfort her. She had made her choices, and now she would live with the consequences. What am I going to do? She whispered. I suggest you call a lawyer, I said, standing up. A good one. You're going to need it. As I headed toward the stairs, she called after me. Holden, wait. There's something else, something you need to know. I stopped, but didn't turn around. What? The paperwork for the foundation. Some of it has your name on it. Now I did turn around. What are you talking about? The incorporation documents, the bank account applications. Porter thought it would be safer if we used your business credentials, your reputation in the community. You forged my signature? We were going to tell you eventually. We were going to make you a partner once everything was established. I stared at her in amazement. Even now, caught red-handed, she was still lying. Show me, I said. Iris opened her laptop and navigated to a folder full of documents. Sure enough, there was my name on several official forms, my signature carefully forged, my business listed as a sponsor of the Maritime Arts Foundation. You were going to frame me, I said quietly. No. We were going to include you, make you part of it. After you'd already committed multiple federal crimes in my name. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I closed the laptop and looked down at my wife, this woman who had betrayed me in every way possible and was still trying to manipulate me. Pack your things, I said. What? Pack your things and get out of my house. Tonight. Holden, please. Tonight, Iris, or I call the FBI myself and tell them exactly where to find you. She stared at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Where am I supposed to go? I suggest you call Porter. This is his mess too. As Iris went upstairs to pack, I sat in my kitchen and felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. The first phase of my plan was complete. Iris was exposed, her reputation destroyed, her future in ruins. The community had rallied around me, offering support and sympathy. But I wasn't finished yet. There was still Porter to deal with, and I had something special planned for him. Something that would make everything else look like a warm-up act. Porter's Tesla was parked outside the Riverside warehouse complex when I arrived at 10 o'clock Monday morning. The building had been abandoned for 3 years, ever since the textile company that owned it moved their operations overseas. It was the perfect place for a private conversation. I'd sent him a text the night before, claiming I'd found evidence that could clear both him and Iris if he was willing to meet and discuss terms. It was a lie, of course, but Porter was desperate enough to believe it. I found him in the main warehouse space, pacing nervously among the empty machinery and dust-covered equipment. He looked terrible, unshaven, hollow-eyed, wearing the same clothes he'd had on when I'd seen him at the Harbor Bar 2 nights earlier. Holden. He turned when he heard my footsteps echo in the empty space. Thank God you came. You look like hell, Porter. I feel worse. He ran a hand through his greasy hair. This whole thing is spiraling out of control. The FBI called my office this morning. They want to interview me tomorrow. What are you going to tell them? I don't know. That's why I need your help. He walked closer, his eyes pleading. You said you found something that could help us? I did. I reached into my jacket and pulled out a manila envelope. But first, I want to hear you say it. Say what? The truth. All of it. No more lies, no more excuses. I want to hear you admit what you did. Porter's face crumpled. Holden, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry about everything. Sorry about what, specifically? About Iris, about the affair, about the money. He started pacing again. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. We never meant to hurt you. But you did hurt me. I know, and I hate myself for it. He stopped pacing and looked at me directly. But you have to understand. Iris was unhappy. She felt trapped, neglected. She needed someone to pay attention to her. So you decided to be that someone. It just happened. We were working together on the foundation, spending time together, and one thing led to another. One thing led to another. I'd heard that phrase a lot lately. For 7 months. We tried to stop. We both felt guilty about it, but we couldn't help ourselves. Porter's voice was getting higher, more desperate. And then the money situation got complicated, and we needed each other to keep everything together. The money situation. I opened the envelope and pulled out a stack of documents. You mean the $200,000 you stole from charitable donors? We didn't steal it. We borrowed it. We were going to pay it back once the foundation got established and started generating legitimate income. With what legitimate income? The foundation doesn't do anything except collect donations. We had plans, real plans. We were going to start offering actual grants, organizing real exhibitions. We just needed time to build up the infrastructure. I studied his face, looking for any sign that he actually believed what he was saying. I didn't find any. He was lying to himself as much as to me. And in the meantime, you were going to let me take the blame? Porter's face went pale. What are you talking about? I pulled out one of the documents and held it up. My signature on the incorporation papers for the Maritime Arts Foundation. My business listed as a founding sponsor. My name on the bank account applications. Iris told you about that? She told me a lot of things, including the plan to frame me for the whole operation if things went bad. That wasn't the plan. Then what was it? Porter was quiet for a long moment, staring at the concrete floor. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible. Insurance. We thought if we had your name on some of the paperwork, it would give us credibility. And if something went wrong, we could claim you were the real organizer and we were just helping out. You were going to destroy my reputation to save your own. We didn't think it would come to that. But you were prepared for it. Porter nodded miserably. I'm sorry, Holden. I'm so sorry. I put the documents back in the envelope and looked around the empty warehouse. Dust motes danced in the shafts of sunlight streaming through the dirty windows. The place smelled like rust and abandonment. You know what the funny thing is, Porter? What? I actually might have helped you if you'd just asked. If you'd come to me 8 months ago and said you had an idea for a legitimate arts foundation, I probably would have been interested. Really? Really. I care about this community. I support local artists. I would have been happy to lend my name and my reputation to something worthwhile. Porter's face brightened with hope. It's not too late. We could still make it legitimate. We could pay back the money, start over, do it right this time. With what money? I have some investments, cryptocurrency, some tech stocks. If they pay off the way I think they will, you're going to pay back $200,000 with cryptocurrency speculation? It's not speculation. I've done the research. I know what I'm doing. I stared at him in amazement. Even now, facing federal charges and the complete destruction of his life, He was still gambling. Porter, listen to me very carefully. In about 5 minutes, FBI agents are going to surround this building. They're going to arrest you for wire fraud, mail fraud, conspiracy, and money laundering. You're going to be charged with multiple felonies, and you're going to prison for a very long time. The color drained from his face. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the evidence I've been collecting for the past 2 weeks. Bank records, email threads, phone logs, witness statements, everything the FBI needs to build an airtight case against you and Iris. You turned us in? I turned you in. Porter staggered backward as if I'd hit him. But the envelope. You said you had something that could help. I opened the envelope again and pulled out a single sheet of paper. I do. It's a confession. A complete admission of guilt, detailing your role in the fraud and exonerating me of any involvement. You want me to sign a confession? I want you to tell the truth for once in your miserable life. And if I don't? Then you go down for everything. The fraud, the money laundering, the identity theft, all of it. I walked closer to him. But if you sign this, if you admit that you forged my signature and used my name without permission, I'll testify as a character witness at your sentencing hearing. Porter read through the confession, his hands shaking. This makes it look like the whole thing was my idea. Wasn't it? Iris was involved too. Iris is going to have her own problems. This is about you taking responsibility for what you did. If I sign this, I'm looking at 20 years in prison. If you don't sign it, you're looking at 30. Porter stared at the paper for a long moment. Outside, I could hear the distant sound of car engines approaching, right on schedule. How do I know you'll keep your word about the character witness thing? You don't, but it's the only chance you have. The sound of car doors slamming echoed through the warehouse. Porter looked toward the entrance, then back at the confession in his hands. I need a pen, he said. I handed him one and watched as he signed his name at the bottom of the page. His signature was shaky, barely legible, but it was legally binding. There, he said, handing the paper back to me. I hope you're satisfied. I'm getting there. The warehouse doors burst open and FBI agents flooded in, weapons drawn, shouting commands. Porter raised his hands and dropped to his knees without resistance. As they cuffed him and read him his rights, he looked at me with an expression of pure hatred. You planned this whole thing, he said. I planned to get justice, I replied. Everything else was just details. They led him away a few minutes later, and I was left alone in the empty warehouse with Agent Sarah Martinez, the FBI investigator who'd been coordinating the case. That was well done, Mr. Ravel, she said, taking the signed confession from me. This should make our case much stronger. I'm just glad I could help. Your cooperation has been invaluable. Without your evidence and testimony, we might never have been able to prove the extent of the fraud. What happens now? Now we arrest your wife and start building cases against both of them. With Porter's confession and the evidence you've provided, we should be able to secure convictions on all the major charges. Agent Martinez left me her card and promised to keep me updated on the case's progress. As I walked back to my truck, I felt a sense of completion that I hadn't experienced in months. Porter was finished. His confession would ensure that he took full responsibility for the fraud, clearing my name completely. His business was destroyed, his reputation ruined, his future obliterated, and Iris would be next. But first, I had one more stop to make. The harbor bar was crowded for a Monday afternoon, filled with people who'd heard about Porter's arrest and wanted to discuss the latest developments. I found Sloane Fisher at her usual table, surrounded by her usual audience. Holden, she waved me over excitedly. We heard about Porter. Is it true he confessed? It's true. I sat down and accepted the drink someone pushed toward me. He admitted to everything. The fraud, the forged signatures, using my name without permission. What about Iris? They're arresting her this afternoon. A murmur of satisfaction went around the table. These people had been following the story closely, and they were eager for justice to be served. "How are you holding up?" Catherine Mills asked. "Better than I expected," I said honestly. "It's been a difficult few weeks, but I'm glad the truth is finally coming out." "You're handling this with remarkable grace," said Tom Chen. "A lot of people would be bitter, angry, looking for revenge." I smiled and raised my glass. "Revenge is a dish best served cold," I said. "But justice? Justice is better served hot, fast, and in front of everyone who matters." The table erupted in approving laughter and raised glasses. Around the bar, other patrons turned to look at us, and I could see the respect and sympathy in their faces. By tomorrow, everyone in town would know that Holden Revell was the innocent victim of his wife's crimes, that Porter Keller had confessed to everything, that justice had been served. It was exactly what I'd planned from the beginning. No apologies, no afterwards. Just the complete and total destruction of two people who had betrayed me in the worst possible way. And as I sat in that crowded bar, surrounded by people who respected me, listening to them condemn my wife and former best friend, I realized something important. I felt absolutely nothing at all. No guilt, no regret, no second thoughts. Just cold, perfect satisfaction. The renovation was complete.